Okay, so let's go ahead and focus on topic one. So here we are in step four. We're getting missing requirements, tips, and warnings for each of the items in the template. Focus is on contextualizing the discussion and subsequent topics. So you can see that this is worth up to 10 points. So one thing I want to call your attention to is that I'm not going to be using the grading rubric as such, but in my mind, I use the grading rubric, but I'm not going to have one that I click on. Basically, I'm going to give you 3 points. I'll probably have intervals of like 3, 5. No, I'm going to have intervals of 3, 7, and 10 points. And so basically, if your answer is not very good at all, you can get 3 points for this one, for example. If it's pretty good, but there's still a good deal of room for improvement, you'll get 7 points. And if it's nearly perfect or great or outstanding or excels, uses all the tips and strategies I've given, then you will get 10 points. So it's a kind of streamlined way of grading, but when I'm awarding those points, I'm using all of the stuff that you've seen in the grading rubric. Okay. So that said, understand that. So going over a few more generalities, but that's because what I say about topic one applies to other items, generally speaking. Um, the table does not necessarily itself have points, but if you do not complete a table, you can lose 5 points for not doing table one, and you can lose 5 points for not doing table two. So make sure you do those tables. Yes, this is an inventory, but it's also a kind of report. And so what you're doing is you're pulling all the data from your gradebook. So keep in mind that I have, like 100 students. So I have all these grade books with all these assignments. And what you're doing is you're collaborating with me and pulling the data out. So it's kind of like we're doing a collaborative project here, or report. Now, that said, going back to topic one, um, topics one, as you can see, I do have some things that are called topics and tables. So anything that's a topic or cited as a topic or has a subheading of topic, that's going to be a discussion paragraph. Like I said, you do not need to worry about constructing an essay as such. But that said, I still have very strong requirements and high expectation when it comes to the writing you do with respect to the topics. So if I were you, I would take some notes on a separate sheet of paper or maybe a separate section if you're taking like notes online, because what I'm about to say to you right now is going to apply to topic one, topic two, topics three, four, and five, generally speaking. So the first thing is that you are to write a response that is a paragraph. As we go through each topic, I'll give you a sense of how many sentences or how long that answer should be, but those are just general rules. Remember, what you want to do is construct a response that has relevant content, that is detailed, exact, precise, teases things out thoroughly and sufficiently, adequately, connecting points or showing how something contrasts if that's what you're doing. Your paragraphs should be coherent and compelling. It shouldn't seem like you're just giving me trivial answers just to get the job done. And of course, I'm speaking to the A-level responses. Um, each paragraph should be a really coherent, tight, logical discussion where I can easily understand what is going on within a single sentence or statement. I understand the idea that you're trying to express or the point you're trying to make, but also I understand why you make one statement and then another statement and then another statement. In other words, there's a good flow or logic or fluidity. When you're trying to make your response coherent, show that, should make it easy for me to see, why did you make point B after point A and then point C, and now I see why you're making point D. It's good to make use of introductory clauses or phrases or statements or transitional clauses, phrases, and statements. You can Google those if you don't know them. The thing is, make sure you use them correctly. A typical transitional phrase that people use is however, but a lot of times students use however incorrectly. Like they're about to say something in contrast to, in opposition to bring up a difference when actually they're either elaborating on something they've already stated or they're actually pointing out a similarity. So make sure that if you do Google transitional and introductory clauses, phrases, and statements, that you do use those items correctly. but these items do add coherence. And like I said, it should be compelling. I should see you really trying to engage with the questions, be detailed, be exact, be thorough. This is your chance. This is your last assignment. Show off to me. Show me that you can write and think in a detailed way. It might help you to look at what I've said about your written responses for maybe, when you had to write a paragraph in other assignments, maybe even in the wrappers. Look at, if you want a sense of, how you might improve or do better, look at what I've said in response to your discussion pieces for wrappers. What kind of general feedback did I give you with respect to your writing? Now, I might not have said that much about coherence and how compelling your answer is, but I might provide other useful feedback because in your discussion pieces in any wrappers, you're supposed to have a meaningful, strong conversation that was relevant and precise and sufficient. And so that your wrapper discussion pieces have that in common with the topics here in this assignment. Now, that said, they're not exactly the same kind of discussion piece. I'm just saying how you might draw on previous feedback to make sure that you don't make like mistakes in this particular kind of task. All right, so what else do I want to say about anything that is a topic? So the other thing, of course, is to use proper writing mechanics and conventions. No texting or anything like that. Texting formats, this is an academic assignment. Also, you want to have good syntax. Watch how you string words together, word choice, word usage, grammar. It's okay to have a typo. Let's say you have a paragraph with 3 typos, a spelling error, you forgot a comma, and you use one wrong word, then that probably isn't an issue. I'm not going to take out for it. But if you have 3 mistakes in every single paragraph, then that could result in some kind of deduction. Or and of course, if you have like the same thing, like you have sentence fragment, you have, 2 in every paragraph or even a lot in one paragraph, then that could be an issue. So watch out for sentence fragments, comma splices, and run-ons. You can easily Google information on that and how to fix them and how to identify them and check your work for them. All right, so what I just said applies to every single thing that is subheaded with the word topic in this assignment. Now, I'm going to be more specific with respect to topic 1. So, again, I'm just giving you a rule, a general idea, but I would say that your response to topic 1, if you were to have, again, this is just a general sense. Let's say you were double spacing, and let's say you were working with 1-inch margins and a 12-point, or let's say an 11-point Arial font. I would surmise that you would end up with at least half a page just for topic 1. Another way to think about it is that a really good, a good response is going to maybe have at least 6 or 7 sentences. Of course, it depends on how long your sentences are. So I'm giving you different ways to think about how long this should be. But really, what I'm thinking, what I have in mind is not, sentence numbers and how long the paragraph should be in reference to a certain formatting. That's really just surface level descriptions for more important things. Sufficiency, have you adequately teased out your ideas and shown me how things connect or whatnot, and then have you given me enough details? Have you given me plenty of details? Can I see why you say A in relation to B? Can I see why you said C? Did you elaborate? So really, when I give you those sentence minimums or, page, length or paragraph length in terms of a page, those are really just getting at the standards of precision and sufficiency. Look at previous rubrics to see how I describe, an excellent rating for sufficiency and precision. That's a good idea. But also look at what I say for the lowest score for precision and sufficiency. That's also going to help you determine and use the rubric for yourself. But, also try to think like me. You've seen me grade your stuff. Okay, so now that was still more general comments for all of the paragraphs. Now, let's definitely focus on topic 1. So as you see here, this topic is focused on contextualizing the discussions that are to come, including the tables, which are not discussions, but it basically sets up the inventory. Of course, one thing I want you to think is that just because I happen to know something doesn't mean you shouldn't talk about it and make your knowledge of something explicit. Hence, I have you giving me I ask what official definition of argument have we been working with, and what was the official definition for clarified argument? To which arguments did you apply these definitions and all that was taught about argument analysis and clarification? Okay, so we're setting up the context because this inventory focuses not, I was going to have you focus on pulling wrapper comments and scores for different kinds of assignments throughout the semester, but I realized you'd end up writing 20 or 30 pages, and of course, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to have you do that. So then I had to select something, and I couldn't decide if I was going to do like theory, like which assignments I wanted to focus on, or if I wanted to focus on one unit. I decided that we would focus on reflecting on how you did with respect to developing your analytical skills, all that has been taught to you in terms of working with arguments. So that's what I have chosen to streamline this assignment and make sure it's not this big, massive amount of work. As you can see, I even broke things down for you into subtopics. So basically, I just made this so that you could just complete it. That said, like I said, take it seriously. So as you can see, I have these questions. So what are these questions relevant to? Well, what I said the focus is. So focus is fairly synonymous with topic, right? So you're contextualizing what it is you're going to be talking about. Well, you're going to be talking about your development with argument and clarifying them. Therefore, I want you to define the terms that name concepts that will be used in the rest of this assignment. So we're setting the stage, we're defining terms and whatnot. So to answer these questions, of course, you want to, throughout all of the topics, is use the question stems to answer the question. Make sure that you are giving me enough of the question stem. So some people will say the official definition is, and they'll give me the definition for argument, but they didn't tell me what they were defining. So you'd have to say the official definition for argument is. Now, this bit of advice that I'm giving you isn't just for definitions, but for how much of a question stem you incorporate. You need to make sure that you get enough from the question stem to be exact about what it is that you're answering, what it is that you're talking about. Sometimes in discussion pieces or other writing assignments, students don't take enough out of the question stem. Conversely, sometimes students take out too much. You have to use your critical thinking, reading, and writing skills, because you can't always take a question stem verbatim as is and then continue on with it to form a statement. It comes off as too clunky. So sometimes you do have to tweak the question stem to make it flow with what you intend to write immediately after the question stem that you're turning into a statement. Okay, now to get this information, do not rely on your memory. Memory is faulty and deficient. So what you're going to do here is you're going to go to these documents. One of these documents is a printout of the lesson on argument, the first soft talk module, and then the second one. When you are using these items here, make sure you get the official definitions. So this is the first argument module. Here's the section that has an argument primer. You are given an initial definition for argument on this argument module page that I've downloaded in the form of a file. Do not use that. Notice where it says official definition and explanation. This is the definition I want. Okay, so let's talk about quoting. Some of this applies to all of your all of your paragraphs. You cannot just plop down a quote. I still see some students doing that. So you can't just start with quotation mark, close, and then this, and then close quotation mark. You have to have an introductory clause. So you can use the question stem from the first question for topic 1 to introduce this definition, right? So the stuff in orange should occur in your introductory clause to the quote, and then your quote would be from here to right here, okay? So you can't just plop down this entire thing as a quote. Another reason why you can't do that is because this is not a complete sentence. It's not a complete thought. It's a definition of a term. So if you're writing a paragraph and everything is supposed to be in the form of a statement, you can't just plop down a definition in quotation marks, because that's not a statement. So again, you got to keep these kinds of things in mind whenever you're citing or quoting for something for this assignment. Okay, so there's that document. And then you'll click on this one to get the definition for clarified argument. Look for the definition for clarified argument that is in a text box. Now, I'm going to make a very important point that you must keep in mind throughout the entire assignment. Whenever I told you to do an argument markup and reformat, I was telling you to clarify an argument. So you learned about clarifying arguments initially in the Soft Talk module lesson that I've downloaded here, and that is in the Soft Talk module. There's actually 2 cited in here in this table. You learned to clarify them, about clarifying them here. You got the conceptual foundational knowledge here, and then you got, and that's just a copy of this, by the way. So right here, that's what this is a copy of right here. Right here, this is what this is a copy of. Okay, so, but whenever you were learning about clarifying arguments in this module and going through this video, that was where you learned to do the markup and the clarification. And actually, we first learned to do some of the marking up when we were focused just on identifying premises and conclusions after doing the first Soft Talk module. The point is that clarifying arguments is what you were doing whenever you were marking up and reformatting one of your own opinions and applying uniform language. You must keep that in mind, because if you don't, you might use the term clarifying in this assignment incorrectly, and then even though there's a lot of subjectivity to this because it's about you, and a lot of this is you speculating, interpreting, surmising, it's still based on concepts that you should use correctly. It's still based on some data, some objective facts about the things that you are talking about. So for example, how we've defined argument, that's an objective fact, that the definition we've given, the definition itself is factual. Like, it's a fact that we defined argument that way. It's a fact that we've defined the word statement a certain way. By the way, some people are still using the word statement in a way that is not consistent with how it's been defined and how I stressed. So even though there's a lot of subjectivity to it, my point is, for all of these paragraphs, including this one, is that if you don't use a term correctly, like the word statement, argument, clarified argument, you can get points off for not being accurate. In other words, when you're using terms to discuss things in the paragraphs, you must use them in a way that is aligned with, consistent, not contradicting what you were taught with respect to a term, a definition, a concept, a method, rule, or any of that. Okay, so you know where to get the answers for this and how to set them up. Now look at what this says. To which arguments did you apply these definitions and all that was taught about argument, analysis, and clarification? All right, so here's where you're going to give me some context. So yeah, you learned about these concepts, right, and how they're defined in this class from the standpoint of logic, but now I want you to give me a little bit more detail. So this is kind of like the first 2 questions are clarifying the concepts that will be used and talked about, referenced in the rest of this assignment. And then this is giving me some more context in terms of like the assignment that you did. So some questions that will help you answer this question is, when did you first construct the arguments that you applied the lessons to? In which week did you construct some arguments at the beginning of semester? What was the general topic of the arguments as a whole? What were they focusing on? What contemporary moral issue? And then you can say one sentence about each argument. So you can say, in the first argument, or in my response to the first item of blah, 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 I constructed an argument about, or that focused on, or that where I concluded, or where I provided support for the conclusion that. So here's a point where you could be counted off for accuracy. If you claim that something is a conclusion in your first response, but it's not a conclusion, then you could get a point off. So this is where it would help when you are, giving the gist of what you argued for in each argument, that you go and look at what I said in your feedback for the markup of that argument. Did I say that you mislabeled the conclusion or the first statement? Remember, most of you did this correct 99.99% of the time in the initial assignment. You should have as the first statement either a conclusion or a final conclusion. Okay, that said, there's another thing, one last thing that I wanted to point out about this. Do not regurgitate your original arguments. I don't want to see 3 complete paragraphs. I don't want to see marked up paragraphs. I don't want to see original responses. Just give me the gist of what the point of each argument was, what you were arguing for. Um, so that at most, do not summarize. I don't want you to summarize the arguments. You're just giving me the gist of what you argued for, what the conclusion was, or what you were trying to support. Notice all the language and phrases that I'm giving you in this kind of like mini lecture / coaching that you can incorporate into your answer. Okay, so that's what you've got there. If you're going for that A-level outstanding response, you could have a sentence that begins with, what is the purpose of the paragraph? The purpose of this paragraph is, well, what did I tell you the purpose of this paragraph is? Go back up to topic 1. What does it say here? So that's that extra level of providing answers. That's all I've got for this one.